Welcome back to TMI with Teryl and Martha. We're talking about wellness issues all across the spectrum. And today we're going to talk about something we're both involved in, but also we want to get to the grandparenting side, but also talk about how our kids are doing too. So we're going to talk about that today.
I thought this would be a fun topic for anybody watching, whether you have a child and your mother or mother-in-law are charged with helping you or just love to come play with your child. And I wanted to also talk to all of you other grandmothers out there. It's such a different world today, don't you think? Being a grandparent in 2025, it's totally different than I think our parents might have dealt with, or even our grandparents.
Yeah, I think definitely. First of all, the world has changed a lot,
So
and
much.
we've got kind of the sandwich generation. It's kind of a triple decker sandwich,
Yeah.
okay? Because you've got a lot of us that are 65 and 70 that are caring for our parents, okay, or some older member in our family. Then we have grandchildren,
Right.
and we've got to figure out how that fits in. And a lot of us are working still, and how I think sometimes kids, you think that if you're a grandparent, then that means you should be available all the time. And you're not necessarily available all the time. And how you navigate that kind of way to do things.
Right.
And of course, when I was raising my children, we had screen issues, but it was the early days of video games and TVs. So I could still like lock them out of the house in the summer and make them play outside. Now you get arrested for doing that,
Oh
you know?
boy, yeah.
So today you've got this balancing of screens and diets and all the other things that are going on that are happening.
I mean, I really believe it's a challenge for my daughters right now, raising their children. I have two, and my grandchildren were born probably about 5 months apart. And for me as a grandma, that's almost like having twin grandbabies. It's just close enough that they're almost like twins, but far enough when they were young that very different stages. But I'd hate to be trying to raise a child in today's world with all the digital information. It's just so much out there. I could see the overwhelm and the confusion and, the do's, the don'ts, the shoulds, the shouldn'ts, and back when I was raising my children, my go-to was my mom. That be it right or wrong, whether she was doing the right thing or the wrong thing, she was my parenting dictionary. And I really do think that was much easier than what the girls are facing today, raising children. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, and you have daughters. So you have daughters and son-in-laws, and I have one daughter and three sons. Two of my sons have children. So I have daughter-in-laws who I
Right.
love and are great and are have been in our family now because they dated for a really long time
Right.
for 20 years. Okay. So I feel like we're a pretty cohesive family as
Right.
far as
They're
that's
part of the family.
concerned, but we live in different places. So I don't have them close by like you do, which
Right.
creates other challenges that you have. But I think the biggest thing is it was so funny. The first time I ever took care of my grandson, the first grandson that we had, who's now 11, but the first time they left him alone with us, he was 4 months old. And literally, Virginia, my sweet, sweet daughter-in-law, wrote me like a book of how to do everything. And
Absolutely.
at the end, she finally said, and whatever you want to do, which was, I thought was great because she realized she wanted to let me know all of these things. And it had been a long time since I'd taken care of a
Right.
baby, but I had taken care of a lot of babies. So we had a wonderful time, but it did take three grown adults, I will admit, to take care of this 4-month-old child, which was very different than what I had when I was growing up because
Right.
I was by myself a lot
Oh,
with
me
my
too.
kids. So that, and now we have six grandchildren. We
Wow.
have one son has two boys and a girl, and another has two girls and a boy. So we've got three of each. And so what we try to do is be flexible.
Right.
Okay, the number one thing I would say to anybody out there is to be flexible. We're a blended family too. Okay, so when I married my husband, he had three children that were 3, 5, and 7,
Wow.
and then we had our daughter. And so, but I've always been kind of the mom, okay, in the situation. Their mother was not in the picture on a daily basis, and so I took care of these kids and raised them.
Wow.
And we've always felt like, a normal family, whatever that is. What is a normal family in today's world? I'm not really sure what that is.
I don't think there is one, Martha,
No, but
at
you
this
make it
stage.
work, right?
Yeah.
You make it work.
Yeah.
So, having these grandkids are just wonderful. And I will tell you that the just sweetest thing that my first son did was that he gave his first son my maiden name as a middle name.
Aw.
So that was such an important, like, kind of nod to me as how much he loved me. Of course, he has a mom and he loves his mom, but I was the person that was there for him for a lot of things. And grandkids are just wonderful. They're so great because there's a different kind of love. I mean, it would be great if you could just go straight to grandkids,
Yeah, give them
but
back
give
when
them
you need
back
to.
whatever. But it is such a love that you cannot explain.
Yeah.
Because and you kind of meet them where they are, right? So I've
Right.
got them from 3 to 11, all different ages, all different things, girly girls, busy boys, all that kind of stuff. And it is wonderful, but you do have to find the balance, because kids do
6?
things differently.
6 grandchildren?
Yes.
See, I have 2, and they're right here.
Yes. You're
They're
so lucky.
so close, and so I am so very lucky. I will have more. I have a daughter that lives in Colorado who I'm sure will have children at one point, but I am
That's
in
a
a s
hint there.
yeah, hello. No, but I'm at a place where I actually take a day that I have one and a day that I have another, and Tara sees a lot less of me, who is our spa manager. I do have a business. I am working full time. You wouldn't know it because I'm not there all the time, but I am very much still working, 6 days a week. Whenever the spa's open, I'm on board, whether I'm in the spa or I'm not. So I have learned how to multitask. But yeah, it is, I'm the youngest in a friend group of grandmothers, people who are already grandmothers. And they kept telling me, oh, you're going to love it. It's the best thing ever. They are just, everything you could ever hope for. And you have this love that's just so grand. And I'm like, oh, that's nice. Really? But it is true. It is so true because once my grandchildren were born and I started seeing my children in them, I was even more lost in them, that it was like getting a chance to be a part of my children again, their early youth. And when we're young, we're busy. We're trying to grow up ourselves. We're trying to work. If you didn't work, you were trying to raise probably multiple children. Today the households are a lot smaller. And, I see that, I see my child in them and I see them and I just can fully give to them and not have to have the distractions that I had when my children were young. And of course, when you're tired, you get to give them back. It's like, oh, that was fun. Okay.
Well, and it is really tiring. I think the
No,
thing that's the biggest
exhausting.
difference, and we have 3 of the grandchildren live in Lexington, Kentucky, which is about 7 hours away, and then the other 3 live in Watkinsville, which isn't that
No,
far,
that's not too bad.
but when you're driving up and down the road, you have to figure timing out, and you've got to work out the logistics, and they're in school or they're in daycare or they're in summer camp, and they don't have as much free
Yeah.
time to
Yeah.
already, like, I don't know where it went, but they don't have as much free time. So what you have to do is figure out the things that you can do. And so one thing I do is I write notes to my grandchildren,
Oh,
like postcards, so they get mail with their own name on it. And so about once a quarter, I'll pull out a postcard. I get these postcards of places that we've been, and I write them a little note that's something that they can read or their parents can read to them. That so they'll have that to kind of hold on
yeah.
mail that I do that. And then we see them probably at least once a month,
Right.
the ones that live long far
Mhm.
away, and roughly about that amount of time, with the ones in Watkinsville too, we see them about once a month, but we video chat. I used to say that I was flat grandma because in the beginning, they only saw me on video chat, so it was like your face was flat.
That's really
Yeah,
funny.
yeah, but they're always happy to see you, and that's the thing, it's kinda like in the theater, leave them wanting
Mhm.
more. I think what you have to do is relish the time that you have because the world is different
Yeah.
as far as how they do things, and understand, I love it when my little grandchildren come running to me, and especially my 2 youngest, who are 2 little girls that are only a year apart, and so they just go in, they wanna know if I have my makeup with me, and so we pull it out, and then they start putting makeup on me, which is
That's
for
awesome.
me, you gotta realize how big of a deal that is because they're touching my face, and they wanna paint over my fingernails, and it's like my control freakness is, like, coming out in that moment because they're gonna mess everything
Oh,
up,
yeah.
but it's still wonderful.
And
It's still
you're
wonderful.
on TV, or actually video and
Yeah,
radio,
yeah.
'cause, so that's a big deal.
Yeah, yeah, so it is funny, but
That's
I'm
fun.
just loving because 'cause we're in this next phase where we've got 2 nine-year-olds and 11-year-old,
Wow.
and they're like little people.
Mhm. They have their own ideas about
They
things.
have their own ideas about things, and you do wonder, where did they get that from?
Was that me?
I know.
Did I do that? For me, I have 3 beautiful daughters, 2 of which that have my grandchildren are total opposites on the spectrum of how to raise a child.
Right.
So I'm stuck in the middle trying to work out how to do this properly
But
with
I
one versus the other. I just try to stay in the middle and just do me,
So your
you
your
know?
children may not be there yet. I've finally gotten there with my older grandchildren that they have finally said, okay, you don't have to meet every rule that we
Right.
have because you're grandma. Like we do this thing when they come to stay, they usually come to stay a week in the summer
Right.
before we go to our family reunion at Smith Lake. And we do this thing called living room camping. Okay. And so, I put everybody, I've got these 2 big couches in my living room. We put the white noise, everybody's got to have white noise now, the white noise on the TV. And then we all sleep in the living room and we call it
That is
living room camping because
precious.
I don't really care what time they go to bed. I don't really, they've been swimming
That's
all
me.
day, so they really don't need a bath. Okay, they do have some baths,
Okay.
okay, but you've been swimming all day in chlorinated water.
True.
Come on,
True.
as long as you've rinsed off, you're okay. So I relax the rules,
Right. Well,
okay?
you're
And
grandma.
yeah, and I don't force them to eat, but if they take it, they have to eat it. That's
Right.
my only rule is
Right.
that, if they take
Don't
it, you have
waste.
to eat it. Let's not waste it. But I do try to um adhere to the rules that I have been given by my children for what they eat and how they eat and do all that kind of stuff. I try to do that. My main thing is to keep them active, though.
I think as a boy mom, and a
Yeah.
girl mom, there's a difference between a boy mom and a girl mom. Um, Both have their pros and both have their cons, right? One of I think the interesting thing is about being a girl mom is that tend to see them a lot more than the boy moms, right?
Yes.
I also find that being a girl mom, I get a little I can be given more birth
Mm-hmm.
because I raised my girls and I will stand up to them at certain times, and I think they realize that, you know, they'll back down, but I also try to respect each one of them as far as how they raise their children. It's not my child, they're not my children.
That's right.
And I want to provide the best support to them as to my adult children as I can. So I try to find some of the, find the rules that I can follow, and the ones that I really find hard to follow, I tell them, look, this is going to be hard um, to do this. I've got 2 different kids here that live 2 different ways. So my oldest daughter and my youngest daughter have kind of gotten to a happy place now. They're 4, pretty much 4. One's 4.5, the other's almost 4. And so they've gotten to the point where they're a little bit more relaxed. I wasn't keeping them both at the same time by myself until just recently because, not sure if I could handle that.
I know.
But, you know, I mean, at
I
5,
got one of those too. Do you think you can handle all
I
3 of
know.
them?
I'm like,
Really? Do you handle all 3 of them? You
yeah.
know?
I mean, I raised 3 daughters single-handedly. Yeah, their dad was a country music artist and he toured with Warner Brothers Records. And so we were married, but I had the babies by myself, worked full time. And, I may have been a different person then. Each child got a different version of me. My grandchildren certainly, have a different person than they ever had, which if you ever watch TikTok or Instagram, you see those really funny reels that show the difference between mom that raised them versus grandma. And that is so true.
But I think you hit on something really important there, that even among your own children, you were different. You know, you think you're the same with all your kids, but you're not. And
Mhm.
that was like a real epiphany for me when I was dealing with my own sister.
Right.
Okay, my own sister. She's 12 years older than I am,
Oh, wow.
and so when I accepted that her view of my parents was different than my view of my parents, because when she was being raised by my parents, there were 3 kids at home and my parents and my dad was traveling. By the time I came along, everybody was out of the house but me, and dad was retired and
Yeah.
mom was working, and so it was the 3 of us. We were like this,
So
almost like a
different.
separate
Second
family.
family.
Yes, even though we were the same family. And so once I accepted and stopped trying to correct her and tell her her experience was wrong, and that what
Yeah.
I said was the way it was. Well, yeah, it was the way it was for me, but
Exactly.
for her it was different. And once we accepted that, our relationship was a lot better. And I think the same thing can be said about your children,
Yeah.
because like I remember my one of my kids said, "Well, we're not like this other family."
Right.
And that's fine. No, we're not like this other family. No family is like this other
Anybody
family.
else?
That's right. So, I think that what I try to do is find things that we can do together as grandkids. I try to protect time with my husband because
Yes.
he is for us, the 2 of us, but also with the grandkids, because there are things he will do with them that I will never do with them. Okay? Like taking them fishing, or a
Aw.
go-kart,
Yeah.
or he built a tree house for them. And so there are things, I always say to him, that we're Oma and Opa, that Opa loves you because he built you a tree house and he's afraid of heights.
Oh
Okay.
my gosh,
so,
that's awesome.
so
And
he
I
got
love that treehouse. It's a beautiful
Yes, yes, and
treehouse.
it's so funny when I told him he could not work on it when I was not home, because I'd be standing out there on the deck ready to call 911 in case, he fell off,
I
but, or something like that. But, um, he is a special kind of person, and the kids always say they wish they could have had, post my husband had cancer 10 years ago. He's a cancer survivor. We wish we could have had post-cancer daddy, because he's so much nicer than pre-cancer
You
daddy
learn a
was.
lot through
You learn a
that.
lot. You learn a lot. Plus, there's a different pressure. Even though men and women have changed a lot,
Mhm.
okay? You still, a man from 25 to 55 identifies himself by what he does.
Right.
Okay,
True that.
even though women are powerful, all that kind of stuff. And so, even though we should have flexibility with the roles, and Lord, my sons are so much more involved with their kids
Right. Well, that's
than,
new. That's
yes,
relatively new.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
my daughter-in-laws say, "Yeah, but they do one thing and everybody praises them. We're still the ones that have to do everything."
Yeah.
Okay, so
They're getting
there's that.
cookies,
Yeah,
for
there's that
little
kind of thing.
things.
Yes, yes, yes.
That's funny. Well,
So
I
let's talk about food a little bit,
let's do.
because
Yeah.
that has been one of the bigger challenges of do your daughters make special meals for their kids, or do they kids eat what they make for themselves?
This is a great subject. And first of all, um, I'm going to call the Yuka app company and see if they want to sponsor us at some point, because we do have a lot to say about the Yuka app all along the way. But my oldest daughter and like I said, my oldest daughter and youngest daughter are very, very different in how they parent their babies. My oldest daughter, had all the stuff to make the homemade baby food, and you know, they literally fed their child until he was 3.5. He is just learning how to use his implements properly.
That can mean a
Because
lot of things, Terrell.
yeah. I mean, they even make fun of themselves because he's almost 4 and he went to go drink some water in it, and it doused him pretty good because he hadn't quite worked that out yet.
Yes.
But they had such a great sense of humor about it. It was like, whoop, missed that part. Yeah. The straws were a good idea, and you don't think about what's needed to drink out of a cup.
Yes.
But as far as the foods go, my oldest daughter is beyond words probably one of the best moms I've ever seen, as far as really paying attention to the details, spending quality time fixing. Her husband actually does more of the cooking than she does. And he does a lot of really healthy food. He's from Colombia. Both of my grandkids are Latin American, so their diet's a little bit different than our diet. But yeah, food is a big deal. And when they're at grandma's, though, I've kind of asked for a little grace because the foods that I get to stay in my house, I don't get them every day.
Yeah.
So I can't get a bunch of fresh foods that will last long enough for them. So, and not always can I get to the grocery store right before I have one of them. So I get a little more grace on that. But I have been eating healthier than normal, which I always ate healthy, but I've got a lot of fresh whole foods now in my fridge. So makes my oldest daughter happy. My youngest daughter is doing a great job. She just isn't always going to have the time that my oldest daughter does.
Well, and I think it's interesting because we have the kids, the grandkids in Watkinsville. They'll eat anything, anywhere. You know what I mean? Um, they will eat whatever you cook. They're pretty fantastic eaters. They're more breakfast and lunch eaters though,
Mhm.
and not much dinner. And so you have to kind of adjust to that because my husband was part of the Clean Plate Club, and he had that battle every night with our own kids, which I wasn't happy about. But it's just one of those things that you have. But we try to give a little more grace on
Right,
that. And then the kids in Kentucky had a lot more restrictions on food, but now they're kind of growing out of them. Do you know
right.
what I mean? They're getting to where they just will
Not
eat whatever, and they're not. And we've adjusted too,
right.
to where we want to make sure we make easy meals that they're going to like, because I do
Yeah,
like us to sit down together and eat
you want
because
them to
it's
eat.
hard to do that. That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
and you don't want them to have memories. One of the things that I create is memories. I'm 100% a believer in memory making, right? Creating those core memories that are special just to grandma's house,
Yes.
right? So we might do special things at grandma's house that they don't do at home and but I do when it comes to sitting down at the table. We get grandpa there and we get the kids and we sit them down and it's just so special to be able to do that and center it around foods that we all like. And, my grandbabies are 4, 3.5, and 4. So their food levels, they both eat really healthy to be in general. They both like to eat, bell peppers and blueberries and fun snacky foods like that. But, there are paletas at my house
Yeah.
and frozen Uncrustables.
Yeah. You
They
got to
love
have those.
those. Yeah.
You got to have those. And it's so interesting because uh, they will, they like to snack, and again, it's funny. I saw this comedian recently that was saying something like, you don't have to take water everywhere you go. You don't have to take snacks everywhere you go.
Right.
This business of all of this is kind of crazy when you're dealing with your grandkids. But I think that all kids are really basically the same. I know that
Yeah, I
my
agree.
kids and grandkids, my kids may not agree with me on that, but I think that ultimately, I know every generation thinks the problems they're dealing with are different.
Just yes.
I think the thing that I've become the most aware of is that the food that I was feeding my kids that I thought was healthy in the 90s was really not.
No.
And so I'm trying to get penance on that, and I'm working on that particular part of it. Now let's talk a little bit about social media. That
Yeah.
is something that wasn't there when we were raising
No.
our kids. And I have learned now that I just don't post my grandkids at all on social media.
Yeah, we were just talking about that before we started filming today. And I have been posting because I'm so proud of my grandchildren. If I'm given the privilege to do it, then I will um, post pictures and I tell stories because there's a lot of people I'm very close to that want to keep up with the children that can't do it otherwise. I can't be making phone calls and single texting everybody. I'm very private relative to my social media accounts, so I have it friends only, etcetera, but understanding that the AI can do all kinds of stuff today, there's a lot more information, so I'm getting a little concerned as to whether I should do any more posting of my grandchildren or not. It would be sad for my mother even, some people that do keep up with us via, social media. But there are really cool things like these frames now that you can send all the pictures to, and things of that nature. But social media is something that has to be perused and thought about and questioned when we didn't have that growing up. If you're a grandparent today, odds are you didn't worry about the things that our kids are worrying about now.
Well, and I actually have one of those frames, and I gave one to my father-in-law. And then what we've done as a family is we use Google Albums. So every time there's a big event or something like that, somebody creates a Google album, puts all
Mhm.
the pictures from that event that everybody took, and then you can go to them anytime and look at them, and you can show them to other people
Right.
very easily. But you're not posting them on social media. And
That's a great idea.
yeah, and my one son's rule is if I took the picture, I can post it, but I've made the decision myself that I'm just not gonna post any more
Right.
pictures of my grandkids. Maybe when they graduate from high school or college or something like that, I will do that. But I've just made that decision myself, and then my other son doesn't want anything on social media of their kids, and, I guess because I'm a young boomer,
Right.
okay? And so I kind of figure my privacy's gone anyway. I mean, my information's been out there for so long.
That's how I feel. I'm like, they've got it
That's
already.
right. That's
What
right.
are they gonna get at
I
this
don't wanna be
stage?
Clark Howard, who's the guy that does,
No.
all the well, some people may not know he is, but I don't wanna be all Clark Howard, who is the guy that saves money for everybody that was on, WSB in Atlanta
He's
for
amazing.
years. But I took his advice 10 years ago, and I froze my credit. And so that nobody can open an account. If they have all my information, nobody can open an account in my name or my husband's name because it's frozen, it's locked
They
down.
can't do anything
Yeah,
with it, so
yeah.
have at it.
That's right. So I don't worry so much about and it was funny because I called Clark to tell him that because I did that right after I had my wallet stolen in 2015. And, he had me on the show. He says, "But don't say you're a radio host." He had me on his show to answer that
My
question, which
goodness,
was
that's
fine. I
awesome.
didn't mind
Yeah.
at all, but it was because I think it gives me peace of mind, because for that. But I do think, I watch this thing on I do follow a lot of X. That is my social media demon, okay, is X. Okay, I look at a lot of X, and they have this thing on there now called AI babies. Okay. And it's like where it's the reverse of taking your child and making them look grown up. It's they take these figures of today and make them look like
I've
babies.
seen
And it's
that.
pretty hysterical.
Yeah,
Okay. But it
yeah.
makes you think, oh my God, can you even trust a picture anymore?
No,
Can
you
you
can't.
even trust anything anymore? And
Absolutely
I think that's
not.
why we want to keep this cocoon
Yeah.
around our grandchildren and children as long as you can.
Yeah, it really is a scary thing, and I think we're still free willing it right now, It's kinda like the Wild West of social media and AI because we really don't know what we don't know at this
Yes.
stage, and probably best to err on the side of caution, where some people might think we're being silly, flagging warnings. I know people, I watch TikTok, I see the social media, and I see people out there, you know, not understanding they're putting their children on in bathing suits on social media. Their young teenage daughters are, in the background behind them, and they're in their bathing suits. And those pictures can be grabbed, and all kinds of things can be done
Well,
with
and
that.
also social media, if you haven't seen The Social Dilemma, which is a documentary on Netflix from a couple of years ago, that really shows this whole problem and how, especially for young women and
Right.
girls, it can be a real difficult thing. But I think what's funny, and you're going to laugh at me, I hope, when you say this,
Probably.
people got to realize, okay, Facebook is for your grandma.
It's so
Okay?
true.
It's us, we're on Facebook. The young
It's not
people
cool
are
anymore.
not on Facebook.
For
They might have had an account they set up when they were in high school, but they don't post on it anymore, okay? Instagram's kind of, I think, more across the board, all ages,
Yeah.
don't you
I
think?
think my children are all active on Instagram, and there's 10 and 7 years between
Yes,
the
yes.
3 of them.
And
So,
then
yeah.
TikTok is kind of younger people
Yeah.
in general. Now I do LinkedIn because it's for business,
Yes.
and I'm not going to ever see my grandkids on there, because it's for business. And then, like I said before, I really like X because I think that it's the best free speech platform out there, and I make my living on free speech. So, I like to look at X for that reason, and I love the community notes, and so that it's kind of like people correcting each other,
Right. Oh, that's
and
nice.
then I like Grok because it's the AI part of it.
Yeah.
notwithstanding, feuds that break out on Twitter, I think it is a really good social media platform. But I think it's a good rule of thumb to just make sure you're clear with your kids how they want to do it. I think that's a really important one. I think you can get a lot of grace on a lot of things, but how you use your grandchildren's image, I
Right.
think everybody's got to be on the same page.
I agree. And speaking of being a grandparent in 2025, I think that is a common question or concern we all have with every grandparent out there. Today is a difficult time, not only because we're wanting to spend as much time as we can with our grandchildren, we're working and we're often caring for older parents. I've been very blessed to not have to be side by side with an aging parent. I know you've had a lot of time that you've had to spend with an aging parent.
Yes, my parents died after fairly short illnesses, so there wasn't much of that. There was a little bit, but my husband's parents, it's been about a 4-year journey, honestly, right now, where we've been the people that are still in town. It's not that the other members of the family don't help; the just proximity,
Right.
is
You're
what it
there.
is logistically. That's just how it works, and so I would never trade this opportunity I've had to be helpful with my mother-in-law who's passed away now and my father-in-law who's still living. But it's something you got to consider. And in a weird way, it will impact your relationship with your grandchildren. And that's a
Yes.
hard thing to talk
It's so
about
very true.
because your kids start to feel a little uncomfortable because they don't know what they're gonna have to deal with when they come to your house, and the grandkids are fine, the great-grandkids to my father-in-law, but it still does impact a little bit, and I don't think it's anything anybody says out loud, but I'm saying it out loud, that just be aware that it will have some impact on your relationship with your grandchildren, and it's kind of a double sandwich generation, as I said before. Now that this discussion leads us into really an important discussion about screens. We started it at
Yes.
the beginning, but
Yeah. Yeah.
screens used to be the TV screen, going to the theater, or maybe that was it, as
That
far as
was it.
screens. Maybe there was
Really.
the beginning of video games kind of when we
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
raising
I
kids,
mean,
the beginning of
yes.
video
Yeah.
games.
Yeah.
But now, I mean, the other day when we were at my kid's house, it was so funny because they had kept a TV out of their kitchen for a really long time because they had a TV down in their basement, and that's the one the kids watched. So for Christmas, he got a big one for his wife so that she could watch her shows upstairs. And so now the kids would rather watch that one. Okay, they take over everyone in the house. You get more than one kid in the house, and they take over.
They
Okay,
do.
so we had this situation last week where each one of them was on a screen and there was still a kids show on the TV too. So I kind of laid
It
the
was
law
a little
down.
overdone.
Yeah, I said, if
Yeah.
each of you are going to be on a screen, then I'm watching the news.
There you go. Yeah. And, you've got several grandchildren, so
Yes.
you have different, activities happening all at one
Yes.
time when you have them at your house. I usually just have one. So my goal is to be an entertaining grandma. I'm the
And you
one
are.
and let me tell you, my, thighs are very sore today from the sit down stand up song, if anybody's ever heard it. Apparently, Alexa is very familiar with the sit down stand up song, and you will get a good leg workout with that song.
Well, and I'll
But
tell
we
you,
did that 3, 4, 5 times.
I'm glad you mentioned
Yeah.
Alexa though, because even your 2-year-old grandchild is going to be better on screens than you are.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And so you need to make sure that they're not asking for things. I
Yes.
call it doom scrolling because look, my husband and I watch YouTube all the time because all the old shows that we like to watch or the documentaries that we like to watch are on YouTube. You got commercials, but that's fine. I don't have the YouTube TV. But in 2 seconds, your grandchild, I call it 6 clicks to Russian toy videos. Okay.
Yes, that's awesome. That's really good.
And so
Yes.
after about 10 minutes, I have to go, okay, are you on the show that we put you on? Or have you?
Where are
And
you
then they
now?
get this look, on their face like, oh
And they
no, she caught
know.
me.
They know really early. So
Yes.
I my granddaughter, more than my grandson, will come in my house and ask for the iPad, and it's not often I give it to her, but if we're gonna take a nap, I give her 10 minutes on the iPad, and that child grabs my iPad, puts my code in it,
Hmm.
and goes straight to YouTube Kids, which I put in a YouTube Kids that's restricted. But can I tell you some of the crazy stuff that's on YouTube Kids?
Yeah.
I mean, unnecessary.
So you have to watch it all the time.
Yes. I mean,
It's funny when my kids were teenagers, you had this flip where, before they were teenagers, you went to bed after they did. When they were teenagers, you went to sleep before they did. Okay. And we heard this cackling. You remember the show that Ozzy Osbourne, the Osbournes?
yes, yes.
Okay. So we did not want them to watch the Osbournes. Okay. But of course, we went to bed early, so they watched it. Okay. And we heard them cackling over it. So we decided, okay, the next time it was on, we were going to watch it with them. Okay, it's not as much fun to
Okay.
watch with mom and dad, okay? But I do the same thing with my grandkids because, okay, let's see what you're watching. I
Right.
don't want to just assume that I know it's bad or good or whatever.
Mhm.
Let's watch it together. And then if it turns out that you are having something that maybe isn't appropriate, that gives you that opportunity to
Right.
talk to them about why they shouldn't
Is that
watch
one
it.
is that child being naughty?
Yes.
What is
Or
that child doing?
the
Or
big thing is, and this could be a whole nother episode, they always make the dads dumb. Have you noticed that?
I gosh, I'm noticing so many things, but oh my
Yes.
gosh, I think that is definitely
They always
something
make
that's
the dads inept.
wow.
And I don't know why, but they do. So what I try to do is point those kinds of things out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, there is scientific evidence out there. I came across an article at some point on the damage that a lot of screen time actually does to a growing child's brain. There is neurological changes that occur when a child is on an iPad or a phone or a device of that nature. That was very scary information. I think everybody's out there. So, go look for it yourself if you haven't already heard that. But I think it's important to remember that it does change your child's brain when they're spending all that time on any kind of gaming or iPhone or device,
Well,
but
and I will tell you the biggest mistake I think I made was that you think just showing your grandchild your photos of the family is an okay thing to do. So you don't mind having your little like 8-month-old baby in your lap and you're flipping and talking to them about who they are and all that kind
mhm.
of stuff, but the light from the screen, draws them in like a
Yeah,
fly to the fire,
yes.
and then it gets them kinda hooked on the screen, even though you're thinking you're doing something harmless, like showing them
But
pictures of
they're
the
watching
family.
you scroll, they're watching
Yes.
you all your activities. I have to say I just had a trip. I did an 8-hour drive down to Melbourne Beach, Florida,
Oh my
and
goodness.
it took
With
11
children?
well, with my 4-year-old granddaughter. This
Okay.
was fresh, new for me, and it took 11 and a half hours to get back because we all know how that looks like coming to Atlanta and with rain and everything else. But my best friend, who is I call her Mother Nature because, she's all things nature and science and biology. She's a retired teacher. She happened to have had an old DVD hang behind the seats video player that I had 2 outlets, one for my daughter, Savannah, and her daughter, Saren, and we just spent the whole drive playing old Disney movies, Dora the Explorer, Blue's Clues. We played Toy Story, the old movies with,
I
Jungle
love it how
Book.
she thinks Toy Story is an
Well,
old
no,
movie.
no,
No, I'm just
Toy
kidding.
Story that's not old, but 1, 2, and 3, you just don't see those anymore.
Yeah, it's true.
But even Jungle Book and just some older Disney shows. And that entertained my grandchild who would otherwise be asking for an iPad.
Yes.
So
You had control
we
over
could
what they
control
watched.
it, they could watch it, and it was just such a nice experience, and I never once gave her the iPad that entire trip.
But I'll tell you folks, being a grandma is like the best thing. It makes it worth everything that you had to go through getting your kids through those teenage years, okay? And my kids were really good, okay? But every kid is challenging as a teenager. That's where they're because what you hope is they challenge the boundaries while they're still under your roof.
Mhm.
Then they can find the boundaries of where they need to go.
Right,
It's when they make the big mistakes. My husband used to call them life altering mistakes.
right.
You don't want them making a life altering mistake. So we're going to wrap this up.
Yeah, we're getting to the
And
end of our
it
show.
is. And if you want to know what we're going to talk about next week, you can go to our social media account. And of course, if you're watching us on YouTube, we want you to like and subscribe. We want you to be a part of that. But we are loving this journey with you. And Terrell, it's just fantastic.
We're having a ball, aren't we?
We are.
And, today is my middle daughter's birthday. And so I've been thinking about being a grandma and being a mom all day today. So it's been a pretty special day to be able to come sit with you and talk to everybody about being a grandparent in 2025 or beyond. And we do so much love doing this for you all. And we can't wait for you to keep showing up to see all of our special guests that are going to be coming to talk to you about everything health and wellness. Your wellness does deserve a little oversharing.